Okay, so we're underway. So, Shelah or Bakashah, questions or requests. It's not rocket science. When we ask a question, we expect an answer, right? Not that we ever often get them from our children, but we ask anyway. But the point is, when we do get the answer, then we receive the answer, we then have to decide whether to accept it or not. But a request is different. Because even though a request is also a question, we expect action to take place in response to our verbal query. We don't just want an answer, we want action. When we're sat at the table and we ask our child to pass the butter, we don't expect our child to say, "I'll think about it." Or maybe, or why. We actually expect them to do something about the request. We expect actions to take place in response to our verbal query, and nothing less than that will satisfy us. So our dilemma is, when we pray, are we asking a question or making a request? Are we wanting unbiased divine direction, or are we actually giving Abba choices based on our expectations? Well, I want this to happen. Just because we want it to happen doesn't mean it's the right thing. Well, is it this or is it that? I'm the king of it. From the day I got redeemed, I've had these discussions with Abba. Well, is it this or is it that? And his answer is always the same, but it might be neither. Don't give me choices. He doesn't like you giving him choices. He just likes you asking him a question. Once you've asked him the question and got the answer, then you can make a request. The first is based on trust, and the other is based on control stemming from insecurity. We basically want to control the situation and give him a choice because we're insecure. Control's always about insecurity. Feel sorry for people who try to control everything. It just means they're incredibly insecure. If we trust him, it doesn't matter what the problem is. He is and always be the solution to it. I don't need an answer as a solution to it. I just know that no matter what the problem is, no matter what the issue is, he's the answer. What method he uses is up to him. He's always the answer. He's always the solution. He's always the full and final answer to every situation. Ask him anything at all, and he will always listen to you. And he will always respond, even to the things that you think are insignificant or trivial. They might seem insignificant or trivial to you, but he knows the real importance of some of them. They're actually some of the most important things you can ask him. You just don't realise it. Because they're actually the key to deep things that even you don't know are going on in your own life and other people's lives. There is no trivial question for him. He doesn't turn around and say, "Oh, you've wasted my time again." And as I've said before, if you want the right answer, you have to ask the right question. And the only way you can know the right question to ask is to ask him. I know it sounds interesting, but sometimes you have to ask him what question to ask. and then you'll get the right answer. Why will he respond to anything even if it seems insignificant or trivial? Because he actually wants to share your most intimate thoughts, hopes and dreams. He's a father. He wants to share those things with you. You ever had times when your kids have asked a question or said something to you and you want to laugh but you can't because you can tell that it's insignificant to you, but to them it's earth-shattering. It's the end of their world if this thing isn't answered or doesn't happen. And to you think, is that all? But you can't say that to them because it belittles them. And we've all done it. He wants to share your most intimate thoughts, hopes and dreams. And he even wants to let his ahava, his perfect unconditional love, address and remove your fears and anxieties. What is it that removes fears and anxieties? Perfect love, ahava, unconditional love. Drives out fears. So don't waste his time, don't waste yours and pretend you don't have any of these fears and anxieties. We all have fears and anxieties, it's what we do about them. And what we need to do about them is let him deal with them through his perfect unconditional love. We need to share them and let him set us free from them today. And he says, in and through all circumstances, trust and obey him. Don't rely on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will level your path. He will always make a way where there seems to be no way. He opens up a way forward, and often he leaves us in the position we're in right now, where we have no other choice but to step out into the unknown. 3/4 of them wanted to go back to Egypt. Why? Because they knew it. Not because it was any good. And he knew that. The reason he made them take 40 years is he knew if he took them on the quick route, which was about 10, 11 days, they'd run back to Egypt. He said so. He said, the reason I didn't let you go on that route is because I knew you'd revolt and go back. You'd lose your nerve. He had to prepare them for the unknown. And sometimes he has to prepare us for the unknown. And the thing that's scary about that is it's unknown. You think, how can he prepare me for the unknown? Because he knows it. Just because I don't makes no difference. He's preparing us for something that he knows. It's just me that doesn't. Like I say, because it isn't unknown to him, that's why. Can you hear his voice today? That's the first step. If you don't feel like you're hearing his voice, then you need to press in and make sure you come to the place where you do hear his voice. Because if you don't hear his voice, how can you have discernment? How can you move forward? How can you do anything safely? You can't. You must be able to hear his voice. It's one of the first things that we need to take care of with him. And at times when it seems blocked up and we can't hear him, we just have to trust. Is he asking you to step out of the boat? I know that there are people here today and he's challenging you and he's saying it's time to step out of the boat. Time to let go of your tradition. Time to let go of your blankies. Time to let go of your safety net. Time to step out of the boat and trust me and come to me on the water. And he's been saying it for a while now. Is he asking you to relinquish your own precious, carefully thought out plans and dreams? It's often the hardest thing. You think, but I've got it all planned out. And I've studied and I've done this and I've done that and I've, And he says, forget it. But only if you've turned around to him and said, I'm willing to be obedient, I'm willing to trust. Is he asking you to relinquish the future that you've mapped out for yourself? Is he asking you to leave your comfort zone? Remember the rich young ruler? But I've done everything. I'm such a religious person. I've got so much trust. I've done this and I've done that, and I tithe every bit of mint, and I've done it since I was a child. He said, fine, give away your money. He knew exactly where to put the finger. And he said, okay, give up your fortune. And the young guy said, are you kidding? I've given up everything else and you asked me to give that up? No way. I could be such a blessing to other people with all my money. I could build a synagogue. No, I think I'd rather choose a Roman officer to do that. Are you willing to give up your blankies and your soothers? You remember that experience with kids? No. They're not going to let go of their blankie. They take it everywhere. No, I'm not going to give up my soother. And you have to come up with all sorts of sneaky ways to try and sort of ease it away from them. And it's not easy. And you come up with all sorts of plans and schemes and stuff like that. And you turn and say, if you do this, I'll do that. No. I'll give you no. It's their security. People are not going to give up the security unless there's something there to replace it. Well, the good news is today there's plenty there to replace it. What he's saying though is, are you willing to give up your blankie? Are you willing to give up your soother? And there's lots of religious people out there, and they've got religious blankies, and they've got religious soothers, and they're not prepared to give them up. But we've always done it this way. I'm sure that's what the people that built the Titanic said. Trust him. Just like any parent, he has our best interest at heart. He's not trying to punish us. He's not trying to hurt us by asking us to give those things away. That's why he won't take them away from us. He's asking us to give them up voluntarily. And that is the key with any child. If you try and take those things away, you're going to have a very upset and neurotic child. You have to get them to the point where they'd be willing to give it to you. He will always give you a choice. He won't take these things from you. He will always give you a choice. He's prepared this journey well in advance for you. But the good news is it's a joint expedition. He's not sending you into the jungle on your own. I think it was some cop show back in the 70s or something. And at the end of every briefing session from the guy to all the people, to all the other cops was, be careful, it's a jungle out there. Yeah. I knew there'd be true believers that would remember.
You're waiting to believe the name, were you?
It's a joint expedition, and on this joint expedition he will feed you and he will nurture you along the way, just as he did when he took them through the wilderness. The reason he took them through the wilderness is he had to teach them to trust him. He had to turn a bunch of frightened slaves into a nation ready to take on the promised land. And he has to do the same with us. And at each stage he will constantly prepare you and teach you and equip you on each stage of the journey, and depending on how well you do in that stage will depend on how long it takes before you can go on to the next stage in the journey. If you're saying, oh, I'm only at stage 2 of my journey, well then I'm sorry, but there's something you need to deal with and let him deal with before you can go on to stage 3. He will not take you beyond your ability to cope with it. So if you want to start moving through the stages, then start being obedient and start trusting him. Learn the lessons. One of my prayers has always been, please don't send me until I'm ready. Which is obviously why it's taken this long before I get to Israel. He wants you to go with him each stage of the journey, heart to heart, hand in hand. It's about a mutual relationship where you do things with him and not for him. It's obedience rather than sacrifice. So many people want to sacrifice this for him and sacrifice that for him. And you know that when you're a first believer, it's, I'll go to the jungles for you. I'll go to the desert for you. I'll do this and I'll do that. I'm sure he sits there laughing, like we've done it when we've heard our own kids. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's finding that balance between what's achievable and what's not, and what's the right direction and what's not. We don't need to worry about it. We just need to wait for him to tell us what he wants us to do, and then just be obedient. So sometimes when we talk to him, we need an answer to our questions. And sometimes we need a response to our request. There is a big difference. If we ask a question and expect a response, it's not going to happen. If we make a request and expect an answer, it's not going to happen. We need to fully understand what it is we're asking of him. Are we asking him for an answer to something, or are we making a request and we want him to do something? And sometimes we just need to examine our motives for both. An old Jewish story describes a Talmud who was travelling by horse and buggy through the Pale of Settlement in Russia to be with his teacher for the High Holy Days. 3 of them make this long and arduous journey to the destination. There's the horse, the coach driver and the Talmud. The horse, of course, makes the journey as quickly as possible, only to avoid being whipped by the coach driver. And because he knows he'll be supplied with an abundance of oats and rested at the end of the trip. The coach driver, on the other hand, is making the trip because he'll be paid well. Bus drivers are like that. And because he'll be complimented and hopefully receive a big tip when he reaches his destination. But the Talmud is making the trip so that he can study and learn and spend time with his teacher. All 3 are making exactly the same journey, but are motivated by totally different things. And yet together they make the same trip. And so it is with us in our journey through life. There is our shallow, basic, mundane, horse-like physical pleasure and fear of punishment motivation, which is called feeling good. Then there is our coach driver response that's motivated by financial reward and is distinctly human. It's called the look good response. And finally there is the selfless, obedient, trusting part of us that recognises and responds to the responsibilities placed on us by our relationships and our commitments that we've freely given and carried out regardless of personal gain. It's the inner student journeying to his master's side, and that's called being good. So we need to question our motivations. Are we doing this to look good, to feel good, or to be good? And you'd be surprised when you examine your motives. The times when you think you're doing it to be good, and when you're honest with yourself you realise you're not. Even when we seemingly are doing great things for people, we're giving somebody something, Sometimes we do it because it makes us feel good. Sometimes we do it because it makes us look good. We have to examine our motive and do it because it's the right thing to do. While it's true that we all make the same trip together, the talmid, the student paying the coach driver feeding the horse pulling the passengers along so that he will be fed, we will never get to our destination if we allow the horse to lead or for the driver to dictate the route. It's the talmid who must keep both of them on track in obedience to his master's instructions in order to reach the final destination. So we need to examine our motivation in each of our situations. Is it about survival, reward, or obedience? And his question to us today is, what will it take to motivate us enough today to just put down and leave our nets? We've read where he's physically done that to people and said, let down your nets and follow me. What was their motivation? What's ours? Because depending on our motivation will depend on whether we're obedient or not. And for some of us here today, he's saying, let down your nets and follow me. He didn't tell them where he was going. He didn't tell them what he was doing. All he did was simply said, put down your nets and follow me. Why? Because if they were the people that Abba was giving to him, then they'd just be obedient and do it. No questions. If they weren't, then he needed to go and find the people that were the ones that he was meant to have. So he's saying, just leave your current situation as an act of obedience, not sacrifice. And follow Yeshua's specific request, his word to you personally. Not what somebody else says you should do, not what somebody else has told you is the right thing. You need to have to hear it from him. You need a word from him, because when you do it and the going gets tough, you need that word. Nobody else can give it to you except him. Every time we've made a move, we've needed the word, because the times when the going's got tough, we've needed to go back to that word and remind ourselves of what he said and why he said it. What vision is he still challenging you with? How many of us here have had dreams and visions over the years and thought, oh, it's never going to happen. I'll let it go, because it's just too hard not to. But is it still nagging away? Is it still there? Let him refresh it. Let him restore it. Let him bring it to pass. He doesn't change his mind. If it's a word that a man's brought, that's fine. But if it's something you've heard directly from him, do not let it go. There is no time limit. There's no expiry date. There's no use by date on his visions and dreams. Just might take a little bit longer than we'd like. What are you going to do with what you've heard? It's a request that still needs a response, not just a question waiting for an answer. When he gives visions, it's a request. It's not just a question and you say, oh, he's just waiting for an answer from me. No, he's not. He's actually waiting for you to do something, to take a step. So you need to sort out, is this a question he's asking of me, or is it a request? If it's a request, then the reason he's still waiting is because you haven't stepped forward and said yes. He's waiting for you, you're not waiting for him. He's more than willing for you to discuss it with him. In fact, if you're serious, he expects it. And say, I couldn't possibly question the Lord. He wants you to question it. He wants you to discuss it. He says, come to me. Let's chew this over. Let's talk it through. He wants to encourage you. He wants to explain the parts that he can explain. In fact, because he expects it, it's a signal that you're actually serious about it and not just ignoring him. If you do nothing, then it's like you're ignoring him. Oh, but you don't know about my life. You don't know what I'd have to give up. You don't know what costs involved. No, I don't, but he does. And he also knows that he wouldn't ask something of you that he wasn't willing to replace with something far better. But is he going to tell me to give everything away? Maybe. Doesn't mean he wants you to. It just means he wants to know if you're willing to be obedient or not. When that young man, and he said to him, you're very rich, give it all away to the poor and follow me, he was more interested in his response than whether he actually did it or not. He may easily have turned around and said, fine, then you're the one I'm looking for. I want you to go and start taking care of the poor. I don't want you to give it all away. I want you to use what you've got. Who knows? He doesn't always tell us that we have to give it up, but we do have to be willing. We have to be willing to put it in his hands. We're on loan to him, not the other way around. Everything that we have is on loan. We don't own anything. I'm talking about Pamela and I specifically. We don't own anything. It's all on loan. And sometimes he moves it from one house to another. We don't have any possessions. We have stuff that we're very grateful for. But who knows how long it's going to spend at our house. It might be somewhere else next week. We don't know. It's happened before. We've moved overseas, filled up the moving truck until it could only just be closed, and just sent it off to somebody else. It wasn't ours. It was his. And it was a real blessing when we came back years later and found it scattered all over Auckland. Refugee families, children, grandchildren, they all had bits of it. It was a blessing. Today has the potential to be a very special day to remember. It has the potential to be a no compromise, no strings, first step on an exciting journey of discovery. It could be a day of boldly going where no one has ever gone before. Is that cheesy? Yes. But it's the only way I can explain it. Nobody has been where he wants us to go. He wants us to discover the new physical and spiritual frontiers. But first you must respond. Before that even happens, you must be willing to surrender your personal agenda. And like the rich young ruler, a lot of people can't get past that. That's where they stop. That's the barrier they never get through. Just like the rich young ruler, he says, fine, I love everything you've done so far, you've been great, you've been obedient, now I want you to do this. And I find with a lot of people, he said that to them again and again and again. And it finally gets to the stage where they turn around and say, "Oh, not that again. Don't ask me that again. You know I'm not willing to do it." And he says, "Yeah, I know. That's why I'm still asking. I'm waiting for a response." I haven't given up on you. You must be willing to surrender your personal agenda, your career, your earthly ambitions, your vision for the future, and you need to follow Him right here, right now. Because if you're one of His followers, then you've definitely been called. Whether you think you've heard Him or not. And 9 times out of 10, we've actually heard Him, we're just ignoring it because we don't like it. We just say, "Oh, that can't be Him, that can't be the Lord, it must be the enemy." Isn't it amazing? Anything we don't like must be the enemy. Anything good, it's like, "Oh, that's the Lord."
It really gets the deep end bit.
So if you're one of His followers, everybody here is one of His followers, right?
Yep.
Then you've all been called. Every single one of you. And just like Abraham, age is no barrier. Just like Moshe, age is no barrier. And the more exciting thing is, you may also actually have been chosen. You know, many are called but few are chosen. Why? Because many are called and many say no. And there's only a few that say yes, and He says, "Right, you're chosen." Far more of them say no than say yes. Who will go for us? They will. I'm right behind them. I'll even send some money once in a while. So you may even have been chosen, whether or not you've responded to that and taken up the offer of being chosen. And the bottom line is, what you do about it now is up to you. He's not going to force you. He's not going to pressure you. The choice is still yours. If you don't respond willingly, He doesn't want it. He doesn't do begrudgingly. He doesn't do a little bit. It's either all or nothing.
Now there is that one problem where you say, "Okay, yes, now what? Now what do I do?"
Yes. And He says,
and then He says, "No, follow up, answer to it." It's like people are thinking, "Okay, I will accept it," and then they're like, "Now what do I do?"
the answer to that is, that's His problem. All He's asked you to do is say yes. He will sort out the details. He's already got the plan in place. He'll start making them all go click, 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 click. One thing I know, the times when we've done something, and there's times when we've thought we were going to do things and we've asked and we said, "Well, I'm not really sure, maybe that's the enemy, maybe that's not right and everything else." But when He really wants you to do something, He will confirm it again and again and again and again. He will make sure you're left in no doubt that it's what He wants and how He wants it. And He'll make sure that you're provided with everything you need to do it. How do I know? From personal experience. A lot of people here know from personal experience. He's not asking us to do something we haven't done before. He's taken us step by step in smaller things, and then gradually bigger things, and then gradually bigger things. Pamela once got me a magnet that went on the glove box of my car. The Fantastic Avenger. It was a Radio Rema car, and we used to go up to the farmer. Was it Helensville, that's right, and pick up the milk for all the families, and sherry bottles, these huge half-gallon sherry bottles, and he used to fill them up with all the fresh milk for all the families. And she bought me this little plastic magnetic thing, and it had on it, the ability to move mountains is given to those who've moved foothills. Little foothills. And that's the principle. He doesn't just turn around and say, right, tomorrow we're going to go and move a mountain. He says, no, we'll start with a pebble, then we'll move on to the rocks, then we'll move on to the hills, and then eventually you'll have so much confidence, just like David did. He'd done the lions, he'd done the bears, he'd done all the other things, so Goliath was just a bigger bear. The mountain's just a bigger hill. The obstacles just get bigger, but it's the same principle, same technique. So what you do about what he's asking you right now is up to you, with or without the assistance of others. If you need assistance with others to confirm things or to pray with you or whatever you need, fine. If you need them, they're there. Why is it sometimes good to have the assistance of others? Because they've been through the same process. We've been there. We've done that. Brian, Gaynell's husband, was talking about the thing he was doing with the car door. And he was talking about, how you take the car door apart to get to the mechanism, to fix the mechanism inside the car door. And he's saying the problem is, all these guys, they know the technique. He's saying, you sort of pull and you heave and you do this, that and the other. He said, the mechanic will just come up and just lift, twist them, that's it. Because they know the technique.
Yeah.
If you don't know the technique, the job becomes infinitely harder. And sometimes it's like that spiritually. It's good to talk to somebody who knows exactly what to do and can save you a lot of hard work and heartache. And they know exactly what steps to take and not have to go through a whole process. So sometimes we need each other who've been through the same process, because we can encourage one another. We can pass on the experience that we've got. The hardest thing for any parent is the fact that we try to pass on our wisdom to our kids and they don't want it. I'm quite capable of finding out myself, thank you, you know nothing. Isn't it a shame that all teenagers know everything? You've got to catch them before they turn to 20, because then suddenly they forget it all. But up until then they know everything. They don't want to hear anything. Don't need your wisdom. Don't need your lessons that you've learned. This is what I was saying last week. The young people need the old people, because it can save them a lot of heartache and a lot of hassle. And the older people need the young people to be able to pass it on to. Otherwise it seems like, what a waste of time. All these things I've done, all these things I've learned, and nobody wants to hear it.
Well, there's a sign that a friend of mine's house that goes, teenagers, keep home, get a job and a mortgage while you still know everything.
Yeah. And it's not criticism, because we've all been teenagers and we've all felt like that. We've all known everything. It was just a shame when suddenly it all disappeared. So all we need to do is to just ask some of the other people. We need to request assistance. What was that movie we saw? She was in rehab. She'd been drunk and she was sent to rehab or jail. And she went to rehab. And eventually they hung a sign around her neck. I just can't remember what it said. But it was basically along the...
If I don't ask for assistance, kick me or something.
Yeah, it's like, if I don't ask for assistance, kick me. And that was the lesson she had to learn. And sometimes I'm sure Abba hangs a big sign around our neck saying, if they don't ask for assistance... So shalom, shokach tov, seeker of good, shalom.